Welcome to Chapter 5, Section 5, Adding and Subtracting Mixed Numbers. All right, to begin with, this is the key concept of the whole section. When adding and subtracting mixed numbers, to add or subtract them, first add or subtract the fractions, then add or subtract the whole numbers. Rename and simplify if necessary. So basically what you are doing is you're turning this mixed number and you're going to do two operations. Basically, if you have 5 and 1/3 plus 6 and I don't know, 4/5, all right, you're going to add these numbers together and you're going to add these fractions together. And then you're going to rename and simplify if necessary. Rename meaning you might end up with, like in this situation, 11 for 5 plus 6. And over here, you'd end up with something like, let me work it out quick, something like 17/15, which ends up being 1 and 2/15. So renaming and simplifying means you're not going to write an answer like this, 11 and 17/15. That's not right. Instead, you're going to use this and do another operation of 11 plus 1, which is 12, and then the fraction, 2/15. So let's look at these examples. 6 and 7/8, 3 and 1/8. You should estimate that 6 and 7/8 is approximately 7. And you're pretty much subtracting 3. Because remember, when we're rounding, if the numerator is almost the same as the denominator, it's a whole. If the numerator is really far away from the denominator, then it rounds down to the 3. So 7 minus 3. Our answer should be close to 4. All right, now subtract the fractions. So what you're doing is you're forgetting about this and forgetting about this. 7/8 minus 1/8. Well, 7 minus 1 is 6. And the denominator stays the same. All right, well, 6/8 is divisible. Both of them are divisible by a factor of 2, which gives us 3/4. So that was subtracting the fractions. We completely ignore the whole numbers that were once there. Over here now, we completely ignore the fraction, and we only look at the whole number. So 6 minus 3 is something you really should be able to do, and it gives you 3. So now, when you're subtracting, you have 3 and 3/4. All right. So that's adding or subtracting mixed numbers, which is very close to 4, which makes us like our answer quite a bit. All right, let's take a look at this. 3 and 1/5. I'd like you to, in a second, pause the video, but do this estimation. What should 3 and 1/5 be close to? What is 5 and 3/4 close to? All right, so go ahead, pause the video. All right, well, welcome back. You should say that this is approximately 3. And I would have been okay with you saying that this is approximately 6. 5 and 3/4 could round up to 6 quite easily, which is 9. All right, so we have to write the problem down, and just like before, we need to rename the fractions using the least common denominator. So we're forgetting about the 3 part. Just completely forget about it. Just look at the fraction. 1/5 plus 3/4. Well, least common denominator is 20. So you end up with a 4/20 and a 15/20, which gives us all together 19/20. Now look at the whole numbers. Add the fractions, then add the whole numbers. The whole numbers are 3 and 5, which is 8. And when you put them together now, you end up with 8 and 19/20. 20ths, which is very reasonable to our estimation. All right, add or subtract and write in simplest form. So remember, it says to do each piece individually. So let's take 7/9 and subtract 4/9. This is from a previous section. You should be able to manage this. Like denominators, so like fractions, you just simply look at the numerators. That's 3/9. Hopefully you can simplify. Both are divisible by 3, so you end up with 1/3. That's the fraction part of our new number. Now we do the whole number part, 8 minus 5. Well, 8 minus 5 is 3. So when you then put together our numbers, we're not subtracting them, we're putting them together. It's 3 and 1/3. All right, this one here, we're adding. So look at the fractions, 3/8 plus 1/3. Well, common denominators, they are not like fractions. So we would set up an 8 and a 3, and we would start to work through what the least common multiple is. Well, factors of 8 are 8, 16, 24. Well, I know that 24 is a factor of, or multiple of 3, so our denominator should be 24. Well, what would we multiply? We would multiply the 8 by 3, so we multiply the top by 3. Down here by 8, so we multiply the top by 8. And my new fractions are 9/24 and 8/24, which gives me 17/24. So that was our fractions. Now the whole numbers should be the easiest part, 3 plus 6, which is 9. And now we are not necessarily adding these together. We're just putting them together. 9 and 17/24. All right, remember it. Use estimation to check the reasonableness of your answer. Okay, this is a very important thing. The reasonableness means that if you're close to what you think your answer should be, then you can feel confident about your answer. So here, estimate. We're going to estimate by doing 11 minus 6, which should be 5. My answer should be close to that number right there. If it's not, then I've made a huge mistake. All right, renaming. I'm going to have a whole slide by itself here. So renaming a fraction or a whole number. So I'll just say rename a fraction. All right. So when we're talking about renaming, we're looking at the fact that 1 is equivalent to 1 over 1, which is equivalent to 2 over 2, which is equivalent to 3 over 3. I could make this equivalent to 10 over 10. Anytime the denominator and numerator are the same, it equals 1. Even if they're not numbers. If they're letters, x over x still equals 1 whole. So that means I could say that 2 is equivalent to 1 over 1 plus 1 over 1, as that gives me 2 over 1. I could say that it's 3 over 3 plus 3 over 3, which is 6 over 3, which is 2 over 1. So there's a lot of ways we can rewrite this. I could say that, let's use 2 again. I could say that this was 1 whole plus 5 over 5. That's still equal to 2. So what I'm going to say is when you rename here, first step is going to be take a whole out as a fraction. All right, so you're going to take a whole number out as a fraction. So 11 can be converted to 10 and 2 halves. All right, and think about it. 2 times 10 is 20. 20 plus 2 is 22. 22 over 2 is 11. I could make 11 into 10 and 3/3 because 3 times 10 is 30 plus 3 is 33 over 3, which is 11. Now, the tricky part, and you should keep this in here, but I'm going to erase it so I can keep these other parts together. The tricky part is then the fraction should be like the other fraction. Okay. So what that means is, so write this down, keep it nearby. So when we look at this, we want to take out a whole, but as a fraction. So 11, we want to make it 10 and some fraction. That fraction should look like the other, and the key word here is like. So that means it needs to have a denominator that's like the other denominator. So in this case, we need to have a denominator of 6, because we need it to be like this. So we will have 10 and 6 sixths. It's like you're carrying a whole. So 6 sixths. Now, we do the fraction part first. 6 sixths minus 5 sixths is 1/6. We do the whole number next. 10 minus 5 is 5 and 1/6. 5 and 1/6 is equal to, or is the answer. It's very close to 5. So let's try this one. Well, we need to estimate to make sure. 12 and 3/4 is approximately 13. 5 and 1/6 is approximately 5. Subtraction gives us 8. Our answer should be close to 8. So 12 and 3/4. Well, let's rename 3/4 and 1/6 using their least common denominator. So 3/4, 1/6. Their least common denominator of 4 and 6. That's 4, 8, 12. That's 6, 12. Least common denominator is 12. So we multiply by 3, multiply by 2, and you get your new 9/12 fraction and 2/12 fraction. So that means we now have 12 and 9/12 minus 5 and 2/12. So since this fraction here, this numerator is bigger than this numerator, 9/12 times 2/12 is 7/12. 12 minus 5 is 7. So 7 and 7/12 is fairly close to 8. So we should feel confident about our answer. All right, let's check some of our progress here. The first one, 8. We need to have a fraction built in. So we're going to take out a whole, and we'll make it 7 and a certain fraction. Well, remember, we want the denominator, we want the fractions to be like fractions. So that means we need the denominator here to be an 8, the numerator to be an 8. So now I can take 7 and 8/8, and I can subtract 5 and 5/8. And all together, 8 minus 5 is 3. 7 minus 5 is 2. 2 and 3/8 is our final answer. For part B, we need to look at this and say, well, we need to first find common denominators again. 5/6, 1/4. Common denominator for the two of them would be 12. Multiply that by 2. Multiply this by 3. And you end up with 10/12, 3/12. So 11 and 5/6 becomes 11 and 10/12. And 7 and 1/4 becomes 7 and 3/12. So subtract. Do the fractions. 10 minus 3, 7/12. 11 minus 7 is 4. 4 and 7/12 is our final answer. So this is a big deal. Please remember that checking for reasonableness, estimating your answer is a way to check for reasonableness. If you don't check, you might get it wrong without knowing. So let's think about this. Let's do a reasonable answer. This is approximately 10. This is approximately 10. And so altogether, you could say that they ran about 20 miles. Now, the reason this estimation is nice, to be reasonable, is because look at letter A. A is 1 mile, 1 and 11/20 miles. Well, there's no way that's even close. Close to 20. How many miles did Alice run on both days? So let's go ahead and set this up. First, let's find, first use the LCD to rename the fraction and then add. So we're going to rename this fraction 1/5. The most common denominator is 20, because if I did the whole listing of them, I would end up with 20 as the least common denominator. And 10, let's see, we multiply by 4, that become 4/20. Multiply this by 5, and you get 15/20. And now you add the fractions. 4 plus 15 is 19/20, and 10 plus 9 is 19. So we know it's not 20. 9, it should be an answer of C. Just go ahead and leave this one blank. All right, here's another multiple choice question. How far will Claire travel if she rides a bus from school to the library and then home? So, school to the library and then home. We're adding these numbers. Well, let's do an estimation. This is approximately 5. This is approximately 3. So our answer should be close to 8 miles. Well, unfortunately, all of these could be close. So we can't really eliminate any one of them. Well, we can look at 4 and 5/6 and 3 and 1/8 and come up with a possibility. Well, 6, 8, the least common multiple, if you made the whole list, I believe is 24. So that would be multiplying this by 4, multiplying this by 4, multiplying this by 3 and this by 3. So do that multiplication, and work it out. 3/24. So we've got 4 and 20/24, and 3 and 3/24, and add them together. 20 and 3 is 23/24. 4 and 3 is 7. So choose the answer that has what our answer as the right one. And if you notice, it is the one closest to 8, which was our estimation. All right. So for your homework, you should of course finish these notes, but you should also do the CYUs on page 272, and there'll be exercises 1 to 7. This, of course, will be our classwork. All right, good luck.